Imagine paying over $1,000 a week for the privilege of staying in your own home, only to realize that the person you hired to save you is actually the one letting you fade away. For many Americans in their 60s and 70s, the dream isn't a fancy cruise or a sports car. It is the simple ability to stay in their own bed, surrounded by their own memories, even when their health begins to fail. This desire to age in place has created a multi-billion-dollar industry of in-home care, marketed as the ultimate solution for dignity in retirement. But beneath the polished brochures and promises of compassionate assistance lies a dark, often unregulated corner of the market where your life savings and your very survival are at the mercy of a stranger. In Burlington, Iowa, one woman's attempt to buy her way into a dignified final chapter ended in a crime scene that has shocked even the most seasoned investigators. This isn't just a story about a bad employee. It is a warning about the high-stakes gamble we take when we invite care into our homes and realize too late that the person holding the keys might have a very different agenda. The luxury of home is supposed to be the ultimate reward for a lifetime of hard work and careful saving. When the victim in this case hired a company called Vibrance Home Care, she was making one of the most significant financial decisions of her life. She was likely using her Social Security, her pension, or her hard-earned 401k to pay for a live-in caregiver. At 65 or 70, that money represents your final line of defense against the retirement crisis that so many fear. But reports suggest that the moment Audrey Engler, a 25-year-old with no apparent ties to the woman, moved into the house, the care became a secondary concern to the cash flow. Rumors and legal complaints claim that the victim's money started flowing in one direction, directly into Engler's pockets. It's been speculated that the caregiver didn't just see a patient, she saw an ATM with a pulse. This is the first and most dangerous sign of elder financial exploitation, when the person paid to look after your health begins to look after your checkbook more closely than your heart. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare that was about to unfold in that silent house in Burlington. Who was Audrey Engler, and how did she end up in a position of such absolute power? On paper, she was a professional caregiver assigned by an agency to provide hospice-level support, but the reality that surfaced in August tells a much different story. Engler was only 25, an age where many are struggling with their own financial pressures, student loans, or the rising cost of living. In the world of caregiving for profit, agencies often struggle to find reliable staff, sometimes leading to a vetting process that is dangerously thin. It's been said that Engler lived with the victim for months, and during that time, she allegedly began to isolate the woman from the very systems meant to protect her. She wasn't just a caregiver, she was a gatekeeper. By the time the police were finally called, the home was a disaster zone, a place where stuff was all over the ground, and a person couldn't even find a place to sit or stand. This is the environmental signature of a caregiver who has checked out emotionally but is staying for the paycheck. And what happened next would prove that the victim was living in a prison of neglect. The red flags didn't just appear overnight. They were ignored by a system that was supposed to be watching. In July, a harrowing incident occurred that should have ended the arrangement immediately. The victim's mattress caught fire. Remember, this woman was bedridden. She could not move on her own and was entirely dependent on Engler for her safety. How does a bedridden patient's mattress catch fire? Reports haven't officially revealed the cause, but the speculation is chilling. Whether it was a cigarette, an electrical fault, or something more sinister, the victim suffered actual burns on her back and had to be hospitalized. This was the system's best chance to intervene and expose the danger. But remarkably, after the hospital stay, the woman was sent right back into the same home with the same caregiver. It is a failure of oversight that highlights how easy it is for a senior to slip through the cracks of the medical and social work systems once they are behind closed doors. But as bad as the fire was, the slow, daily rot that followed was even more shocking. By August, the neglect had reached a level that is difficult to even describe without a sense of deep anger. When the police finally entered the room after the woman had passed, they found a scene out of a horror movie. Large bed sores had formed, a catheter was full of urine, and the woman was lying in her own feces. Engler would later reportedly admit to police that she only moved the woman one time a day. In the medical world, a bedridden patient must be turned every 2 hours to prevent the skin from literally rotting away and forming deep, infected wounds. To move someone once a day is more than just bad care. It is a form of physical torture. Furthermore, Engler was allegedly withholding the woman's essential medications, the very things she was being paid to administer, to manage the woman's pain. This is the hidden risk of home care. There are no supervisors walking the halls, and no one to hear the cries for help when the medication runs dry. The most modern and cruel aspect of this case was the digital wall Engler allegedly built around her victim. Because the woman couldn't move, her only way to communicate with Engler, who was often in the same house, was via text message. Detectives reviewed the message history and found a pattern that would make anyone's blood run cold. The victim would text for help, for water, for medication, or for a simple change of sheets. Engler would allegedly ignore these messages for hours on end, leaving the woman to wait in pain and filth. Imagine lying in your own bodily fluids, unable to move. Staring at a phone and knowing that the person in the next room is simply choosing not to answer you. It's been said that Engler even encouraged the visiting nurse to come less frequently, likely to hide the fact that the woman was getting skinnier and that her money was going to Engler. She was allegedly starving the woman of both food and human compassion while draining her of every cent. Why didn't the case manager or the nurse stop this before it was too late? This is the question that haunts the Burlington community and anyone considering home care for their family. The victim had actually told her case manager that she needed the company to buy her clothes because her money was all going to Engler. This was a clear, direct cry for help regarding financial exploitation. Yet, the wheels of bureaucracy turn slowly, often too slowly for a woman on hospice. The speculation is that the agency, Vibrance Home Care, may have prioritized the billable hours over the actual safety of the client. This is the corporate side of the retirement crisis, when human lives are treated as line items on a spreadsheet. The incentive to investigate a profitable placement is often tragically low. The nurse, too, allegedly noticed the weight loss and the pain, but the caregiver's manipulation of the schedule kept the true horror of the situation hidden from view. Audrey Engler has now been charged with intentional dependent adult abuse, and a legal nightmare surfaced for the agency involved. In her police interview, she reportedly admitted she could have had more compassion for the woman. This understatement is perhaps the most revealing part of her psychological state. It wasn't a lack of time, it was a total lack of empathy. For a senior citizen, your greatest asset isn't your house or your 401k. It is your agency and your ability to be heard. Once you lose the ability to move or speak for yourself, you are at the mercy of the compassion of others. This case proves that compassion cannot be bought, but it can certainly be faked until the contract is signed and the money is secured. Engler is expected in court for a preliminary hearing on December 29th. But for the victim, the justice will come far too late to save her from the filth she was forced to endure. So, how do you prevent your retirement from becoming a crime scene? The lesson here is that outsourcing your care doesn't mean outsourcing your oversight. If you or a loved one are choosing in-home care to avoid a nursing home, you must insist on unannounced visits from family or third-party advocates. You must install cameras in common areas and the bedroom, which is entirely legal in your own home, and you must never, ever allow a caregiver to have access to your primary bank accounts or financial apps. Rumors of good agencies are often just that, rumors. You need data, you need references, and you need a plan B. The moment a single meal is missed or a single text is ignored. The digital age has made it easier to monitor care, but it has also made it easier for people like Engler to hide behind a screen while a tragedy unfolds in the next room. The final cost of this tragedy wasn't just the life of a woman who deserved peace in her final days. It was the exposure of a system that is failing our elders at every level. As more of us reach the age where we need help, the predatory caregivers will only become more common, driven by a lack of oversight and the tempting wealth of the retiring generation. Protecting your retirement means protecting your body from those who see it only as a source of income. Don't let your desire for the comforts of home blind you to the shocks that can happen behind closed doors when no one is watching, because in the end, $80 for a meal is one thing, but your entire life's work and your very dignity is a price no one should have to pay. The exposed truth of the home care market is that it is often the Wild West of the medical world, where the accused can operate for months before the authorities are even aware of a problem. If you don't act as your own sheriff and protector, the system has shown that it might not step in until it's time to call the coroner. This Iowa horror story is a reminder that the most dangerous person in your life might be the one you're paying the most to be there. Take a long, hard look at your care plan today, because your once a day might be the only chance you have to save yourself from a future you never signed up for. The mattress fire was the warning, the bed sores were the evidence, and the silence was the weapon. Don't let your story end the same way. What's even more revealing is how the community responded. The comments sections are filled with people who have seen this neglect firsthand. They talk about wretches in nursing homes who only show up for the sign-in bonus and then vanish into the break room. They talk about the red state versus blue state politics of care, but the truth is that filth doesn't have a political party. It only has a victim. Whether it's in Iowa or New York, the elderly are being treated as disposable by a generation that hasn't been taught the value of the people who built the world they now live in. It's been said that you can judge a civilization by how it treats its most vulnerable, and based on the harrowing details of this case, we are failing the test. Ultimately, your retirement security is about more than just numbers in a 401k. It is about the contracts you sign and the people you trust to fulfill them. Audrey Engler might face the consequences in court, but the real shocking truth is that Vibrance Home Care is still out there, and hundreds of other workers are being sent into homes today with the same lack of supervision. If this story makes you feel frustrated or anxious, let that feeling drive you to check on your neighbors, your parents, and your own future plans. Because the only thing more nasty than the filth described in that Iowa bedroom is the silence of a society that lets it happen. We must demand change before the rot spreads to every corner of our healthcare system, and it starts with never letting a caregiver believe they are the ones in charge. The revealed history of this case will likely be a long and painful one in court, but for you, the viewer, the takeaway is simple. Trust but verify. Use the technology available to you to keep an eye on your resources and your health. Don't let a smiling face in a mugshot be the last thing someone sees of the person you worked so hard to become. Your life is worth more than once-a-day care, and your retirement should be a time of comfort, not a countdown to a tragedy. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and never let the gatekeepers take away your voice. As the legal accusations surfaced against Engler, we are reminded that compassion isn't a job requirement on a resume, it's a character trait that must be proven every single day. If you don't see it, if you don't feel it, and if the filth starts to pile up, don't wait for a case manager to notice. Get out, speak up, and protect the life you've built. Because in the world of home care, the most shocking reality is that you are often your only advocate until it's far too late.